So the spacesuits in Starfield, which are essentially the equivalent of armor in most other games, have a hell of a lot of different stats and values to keep track of. It was all a little bit confusing to me when I started playing, and so today I wanted to go over pretty much the explanation for everything you need to know about each of these spacesuits in Starfield. If you guys are interested in Starfield, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. There is plenty more content like this on the way, and I'm going to be doing a setup tour at 1k subscribers, so be sure to hit that subscribe button. But with that being said, let's get stuck into the Starfield spacesuits explained. Now, firstly, with the most basic aspects, just to pretty much get them out of the way, they're pretty much irrelevant, but it is worth explaining anyway. These are obviously the mass value, which is obviously just how much the actual suit weighs, and then the overall value, meaning how much it costs / can be sold for. Now, keep in mind, the value that you see is not necessarily what you will sell it for. Vendors in this game and just all Bethesda games, they obviously buy things off you for pretty much a cut cost. Essentially, you get ripped off from every vendor in the game, so just keep that in mind. But that is pretty much all you need to know when it comes to those basic aspects of the spacesuits. Now, the three most important stats are the combat stats, which you can see up the top where it says Phys for physical, NG for energy, and EM for electromagnetic. Now, these are pretty much just different types of damage that can be dealt to you. For example, physical damage is just like regular bullets as well as melee damage. Energy is the damage that you take from, say, particle or laser weapons. Even, for example, the cutter actually deals energy damage rather than physical damage. And then, like I said, the electromagnetic damage is dealt to you by a variety of other weapons and enemies in the game as well. There isn't necessarily a single value in most other games. The armor might just have a overall damage or protection value. So something that gives you 100 protection, for example, just gives you a very clear indication of, I guess, the overall quality of that item. But in this game, it is a little bit different because there's not just like an overall protection value. It is actually split between those three things: the physical, the energy, and the electromagnetic. It obviously varies on situation to situation to what is the most important. Early game physical damage is probably the most common from pirates or different wildlife, for example. Most pirates just carry regular weapons that are going to deal regular damage, and so early on I would say physical damage is probably the most important to focus on. Later in the game, and keep in mind I haven't actually finished yet, so I can't confirm this, but I'm going to assume that the enemies get a bit more broad in terms of the damage they deal, and I've even noticed that just being in mid-game. And so later in the game you may want to switch to something that protects you more from energy damage and stuff like that. So it obviously varies situation to situation. There isn't any of these stats that are necessarily more important than the others. Now, other than the combat values, we then do have the 4 values down below that, which are actually the environmental damage values, and these all pretty much come from the elements. For example, there'll be planets with really high temperatures, or some moons will actually have gas vents that deal damage and stuff like that. Now, the thermal value, that protects you from anything hot, essentially, like the examples I just gave, but I think it also protects you from the cold too. So if you go to a planet that is absolutely freezing, the thermal value is also related to that as well. It's not just hot stuff, it is anything to do with temperature damage, essentially. The airborne value will protect you from stuff that damages your character's lungs, for example, toxic gas or poisonous spores. The corrosive value will protect you from anything that deals corrosive damage, such as, for example, acid type damage, as well as even just things like a sandstorm on certain planets, as that does corrode over time as well. Lastly, and this one is pretty self-explanatory, there is the radiation value, which obviously protects you from anything radioactive. So it is a little bit different in this game. Obviously, in a lot of other games, even when you look at a game like Skyrim, most armor sets have just kind of an overall value. It'll just give you, for example, 100 protection. The armor you might be wearing currently only gives you 50 protection, and so that's obviously just twice as good as what you're currently wearing. It's a little bit different in this game because it varies so much. There are essentially 7 different categories, the top 3 being the most important, but the bottom 4 are definitely still important as well. And so because of that, it can become a little bit more confusing, and hopefully that sort of clarifies it for you guys as to what those values actually mean and what they protect you against. Obviously, at the end of the day, the higher the number, the better. So you obviously just want any sort of spacesuit that is going to give you the highest numbers you can get for any of those values. But aside from that, it kind of just comes down to what you want to protect yourself against. And something that I found is that it is actually a great idea to pretty much hoard a few different suits that are good for different conditions. Keep them in your ship's cargo hold, and then you can actually just access them whenever you need them. So you might be wearing a certain spacesuit, and then you go to a planet that is absolutely freezing, and you might want to get one that has a really high thermal value that is then going to protect you from the elements. And then later on you might be doing a mission where there's a bunch of enemies using energy weapons and you want to switch to something that has a high energy value that will protect you better from that. So it's definitely a very good idea to actually keep multiple different suits. Carrying them on your person is obviously not a good idea because you will become encumbered. That is never a good thing. So you definitely want to store a lot of these in your cargo hold. And then realistically, you just want to choose, I guess, the best all around one to wear when you're just out and about. So anyway, guys, hopefully that helped clarify the spacesuits and I guess their stats and values for you guys. It was definitely a little bit confusing when I started playing. And so hopefully that helps you guys out. If you guys like this video, there is plenty more on the way, going over different spacesuits, weapons, a bunch of different stuffs across different planets, heaps of stuff you guys didn't know you could do. There is heaps of Starfield content on the way. So be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on those notifications. And like I said, at 1K subscribers, I will be doing a setup tour. So make sure you don't miss out. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day and I'll catch you all in the next one.